Good afternoon on what is a bright, cold and sunny day. It is Tuesday, the January the 9th, and I'm in the reading up with a nice hot cup of tea and a box to continue unboxing. And what I'm going to pull out of here is this, which is the Dungeon Crawl Classics Riders of the Phlogiston, the Goodman Games 2019 Yearbook. Now, going back to 2013, Goodman Games has presented a book, essentially a equivalent of an annual each year at Gen Con, looking back at the previous year and also at the previous Gen Con as well, taking in events in the Dungeon Crawl Classic community, and presenting support for its games, and backing it up with a mixture of generally reviews and other content. And it's generally a pretty good read, lots of nice support. But with the publication of the Goodman Games 2018 yearbook, it moved to doing a single scenario, essentially a tournament scenario, which it had run at Gen Con the previous year. So let's have a look. One of the most popular releases of the year returns. The annual compilation of articles for the DC role-playing game. It includes Riders of the Phlogiston, the 2018 Gen Con Tournament Adventure module. This year's release includes 4 separate booklets, the adventure module, a player's pack, a judge's pack, and a book of handouts. Your local group can play the adventure just like the tournament format that was used at Gen Con and Origins. In addition, a 5th booklet includes herein a yearbook of the great new Goodman Games community content from the last year. So in this year, essentially, you're getting a pack rather than a single book. So it's going to take a little bit longer to look through, but let's get it open and find out what we've got inside. So just slice through the cellophane. So basically, cold fingers here. It is quite a chilly day. So this is a bit different in format to the other releases in the line. It's almost actually a radical release. So we can actually slide all 5 books out of this. So you've got the blurb on the back. I'll show you the whole. There we go. There's the whole front of the cover. And you've got the classic image of, so basically, Dungeon Crawl Classics community content. Sort of like, well, I say community content, you've got the classic Dungeon Crawl Classics heroes, you know, in their sort of like wizard's van, travelling to the next adventure across the sort of the Dungeon Crawl Classics multiverse, because it does take in elements of science fiction as well. So we have here Riders on the Phlogiston, Gen Con 2018 Tournament Adventure. So we've got introduction and round 1, the infinite phlogistopic engine complex. And adventure background, judges' notes on the tournament and rules format, because it's always slightly different to other adventures for Dungeon Crawl Classics, because essentially, as you're going through, you'll have objectives that you don't know about, but you're going to be scored upon by your judge. So there's the map for round 1. Essentially, you've got guide to the activated Phlogiston and a guide for they who hesitate are TPK'd, total party killed. And this is, basically quite a thick book, but broken up into multiple booklets. Let the rules bend to use one use for featherfall, protective suit properties, elements of the scenario. Basically, you know, you've got an involvement with Phlogiston. Essentially, was meant to be sort of like that substance that burnt when you lit it. Obviously disproved since, because essentially through better chemistry and knowledge of chemistry. But it sort of exists as one of those would be ideas that you can just run with in an adventure like this. So we've got illustrations of the handouts for the game masters, the judges' benefit. And we've got a mini hex crawl here for your player characters to explore. And you've got the adventure involves a lost wormhole and other things. A lone wizard who almost finished the round. I mean, here's the thing. This so these are actually definitely with this one. The lone wizard who almost finished the round. These are in-game reports, which I imagine that also similarly the earlier. Where are we? My fingers are say the earlier. They Who Hesitate are TPK. There's going to be in-game reports, and they're always sort of like, in some ways, they're always the most once you've kind of read through the scenario, they're almost like the most interesting bits to read, because you're getting in-game reports of how did this adventure play out with other groups, you know, and they're usually pretty amusing and entertaining. So we've got a robot integration table. So essentially, with the inclusion of Phlogiston as the sort of like the object of the scenario, it's definitely got a science fiction bent to it. It's sort of almost like a science fantasy bit to it. We got to round 2, Beneath the Shudder Mountains. This ties it into the Purple Planet setting, which came out as a box set, and is difficult to get hold of these days. So there we go, Beneath the Shudder Mountains. We've got the map for that for round 2. So more sections of in-game reports. You know, this is why they call it a playtest. Arriva lines leaves behind no loot. Area 2.5, going to basically get a bigger map of one location. So, and you know, there's a lot of text here, but it's always cleanly laid out, easy to understand for the most part with these things. Dungeon Crawl Classics, Goodman Games has plenty of experience with producing these books, and in generally making them entertaining. A gander at the Gander Beast, and also the maps are done so you've got a different sense of physicality. You know, they're not flat. You know, they're always done in sort of like isometric, almost isometric sort of style. Round 3, Escape from the Purple Planet. And of course, so yeah, there we go. There's the maps for that. Let's just show you that in more detail. And of course, the advice is good. Fear is the mind killer. I shall not fear. So we've got Sepulchre of the Crystalline Miners. That's the next map. And here we come to the conclusion, and then on to the next section. The next booklet is slimmer. This is Riders on the Phlogiston, player handouts. I always love a scenario with player handouts. So there we go. And again, this is sort of vaguely reminiscent. I say vaguely reminiscent of sort of like, you know, S3 Expedition to Barrier Peaks with the science fiction element. You know, basically the use of technology rather than straightforward fantasy. That's book B. Let's have a look. Judges pack. Well, basically, there we go. There we go. There's the judge with her copy of Dungeon Crawl Classics. And this is essentially this actually does more than give advice on running the campaign, the scenario. We've actually got a recap by Harley Stroh. Essentially, you know, this is a reminiscence, a look back at how the event was run. And that there again, like the reminiscences essentially of in-game play, they're always interesting to read. You've got essentially analysis and breakdown of who played what and how well they did. And the awards given at the end. So essentially you're actually following sort of like, you go following through on the tournament as an event and the people involved. Before we move on to the introduction, judges' rules, tournament guidelines, general rules and rulings on how to run it if you were to run it as a tournament. You don't have to, you can run it as a straightforward scenario. Dealing with elements like warriors and dwarves, clerics, wizards and elves, their role and what they can do in the scenario. Critical hits and so on, and then we come on to questions, emergency novelties, including an addendum, spell duels. And we've got a table here of basic critical hits, basically, which differs slightly. Are going to differ all basically from the core rules specific to this campaign. You've got new rules for 2018, including artifacts of the ancients, things that the player characters can find and use. Critical hit tracker. Artifact critical failure tracker or disapproval tracker. So you've got elements you'll be tracking throughout the game as the judge, more than normal. And then you've got scoring trackers as well. So that's the third book. We've got a player pack. And this repeats. This is sort of like that colour cover, but black and white. And this gives you an introduction, player guidelines, and frequently asked questions. Looks at what a tournament is in Dungeon Crawl Classics and the adventure background, and it's followed by several pre-generated characters. So there we go, and they look like that. So I'm not going to show you all of them because they're all basically pretty much going to look the same, and then on the back you've got a bit of a blurb for the players before they get into things. And then the final book is what you would normally expect to see at essentially in your Goodman Games yearbook. This is the community content book. So the fun here is it's Goodman High. And it's looking back, essentially, all the people involved in the community with the theme of high school in their sort of like their wizard's van, setting out, for wherever they're going to go. Welcome, Goodman High. For those who are about to quickly salute you, we have, of course, an editorial introduction by Joseph Goodman himself. We have the Goodman High is a pocket dimension deep in a galaxy App N or Appendix N. I think it's a bit of it's the conceit of the players thinking back to when they were at high school, and we have a yearbook of all those involved, including somebody absent on photo day, but a quick blurb on each of them, their high school photo. Even got a wanted list. Wanted for leaving school premises during lunch hour. Adverts for things on the school, like the AV club. Lost one skateboard wheel. More photographs of the major personages involved. The Goodman Games High School, Goodman High basketball team, and then we have Real Life Adventures Quest for the Wizard Van. The Wizard Van is an actual van that Goodman Games sourced, painted, and outfitted. So essentially, it's a mobile van in which you could run adventures. So far, basically, last time we were at Gen Con 2021, is it 2021? Wasn't last year, the year before. we were due to be actually playing a game in the Wizard's van, and it didn't come to pass due to unfortunate circumstances. But we've got photographs of us in the Wizard's van, so that game got cancelled. We were really looking forward to it, but that wasn't the worst gaming experience we had at that Gen Con. Nevertheless, it's fun. It's looking at the photographs was in the Wizard van, and as a bit of a joke, I actually gave Brendan Lassalle of Goodman Games his own Wizards van to carry with him all the time. Anyway, the customer creature catalog, new DC RPG monsters. So basically, these are customer monsters. One of us, some of which might be us. Again, these are those that's human. They're not Italian. They're not serious at all. But even I mean, essentially, you probably wouldn't use them unless you were playing a very silly game. So actually quite a lot of these. So this is really done. Essentially, the community content sort of booklet is done with a really big dose, sort of of humour and tongue stuck firmly in cheek, as it were. So essentially, you've also got an index at the end of there of fan monsters. Before we get on to Harley's Angels, again, Dungeon Crawl Classics advert. Joke there for Harley Stroh, and then we've got more artwork. Looks like Errol Otis for illustrating for various Dungeon Crawl Classics items. So, for example, this is his painting of the frog hemoth. So he's taken through the different processes of painting that illustration. And this comes from the front, which is basically from the original Adventures Reincarnated 3 of Expedition to Barrow Peaks, Errol and the Rebel Monsters, and then Goodman Games World Tour, followed by photographs taken from those events around the world, mostly in the States, but elsewhere as well. Basically, Goodman Games has its own road crew, travelling around the world, running games at events all over. So here we have the Meet the Riders on the Phlogiston, winners of the 2018 Gen Con DC tournament. There we go. We've got a list of all the and the winners of the first ever Goodman Games medals announced at Gen Con 18. The winners there. More community photographs. Front and centre there. Brendan Lassalle. And then just sneaking in there. And he's there again. He does hold the camera. And a newsflash, Origins tournament update. This is basically the background to the tournament when it was run at Origins. So you've got basically more reports about the tournament. Mailing list artwork. And then you've got another project building the obelisk as it appears at essentially as part of the Goodman Games presence at conventions. They really do put on a great stand at Gen Con. New releases for Gen Con 2018. Because obviously you've got to get a bit of advertising in, that's no problem. So yeah, essentially you have got various things in there, some of which, but a lot of which will go into trade. Gen Con t-shirt artwork, and people do really like their basically the Goodman Games artwork, especially on the t-shirts. And we have basically things like Dungeon Crawl Classics dice, even Dungeon Crawl Classics nunchucks. Yes, really. And then you have to support that the nunchaku, essentially a martial artist style class for Dungeon Crawl Classics. And then we've got a list of events for Dungeon Crawl Classics at Goodman Games in 2019. Sorry, at Gen Con 2019. And we have, as you look at the list of comics in Dungeons and Dragons, that's written by James Malazewski. That's an interesting article, and it's followed by Adventures in Fiction, Ballantine, Adult Fantasy. Goodman Games also does sort of like specialise in fiction, appendix and fiction, and does bring that back. There's a lot of it. If you're actually at Gen Con, the stand does have a book stand there. Then we've got Appendix N, Archaeology, exploring the fiction that inspired Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson to create Dungeons and Dragons. So he looks at Harold Lamb and Clark Ashton Smith, William Hope Hodgson. So these are going to be interesting articles to look at, to really read up about them if you don't know about them. Basically, William Hope Hodgson has been explored sort of mostly in sort of like mythos-related content, and then you have the luck token redemption table, essentially, which is sort of like a roll table which you can get a benefit from, a boon, and so on, when you take your luck token to the Goodman Games table, the stand. So yeah, and then of course you've got a section for the autographs if that's your sort of thing. So that's the Goodman High booklet to go with the overall package. So you are getting quite a lot in here. You're getting quite a big adventure, and that's well supported in the kind of style of the special modules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, like S1 Tomb of Horrors or S3 Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. With the booklet of illustration, basically maps and handouts and so on for your players, as well as for, in this case, your judge. So yeah, that's the Dungeon Crawl Classics, the Goodman Games 2019 yearbook, Dungeon Crawl Classics Riders on the Phlogiston. I look forward to giving this a proper review in due course. Anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook, where you'll see me out here with a box containing a book or game from which I will unbox, and in this case, basically a Goodman Games annual, which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of the Nook. Be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.